Hello everyone and welcome back to You Need This Book in Your Life, the weekly book review show where the host eagerly awaits your likes, shares and subscriptions like the salivating Pavlovian dog that he is. And this week I'm going to be touching on the work of Dr Adam Rutherford and his book How to Argue with a Racist. Now, you may get the impression from a title like that we're actually talking about some sort of debating society book where you're going to get the notion of a James O'Brien kind of this is how to beat them and this is where to find the gaps in their argument. This is more fundamental than that. Dr. Rutherford's book is a discussion about how science just doesn't support the convictions made by racists and bigots. Think about it in terms of old-style eugenics in a way, and unfortunately we're seeing the kind of the return to some moronic old ways of thinking in sort of pigeonholing people in terms of racial boxes and thinking that you can make judgments about them on that basis, which, even as I say it, is sounding stupid out loud, but unfortunately there is a sizable amount of the population for whom it doesn't sound stupid. This is aimed at those of us who disagree and how we can persuade those who do still agree with those moronic old ways. But why are they moronic? Let's listen, rather than to me ranting, let's listen to an actual qualified geneticist and alumni of UCL. So the book is broken into 4 sections. If you think about it in terms of skin, ancestry, physical prowess and intellectual capacity, those are the 4 areas where you tend to get a lot of prejudgments made based on what we determine as race. And the one that I found the most interesting, right off the bat, if you come to skin colour, I mean, we all have this idea, don't we, that there's a kind of a, you see it with the meme from Family Guy where you've got kind of a Dulux chart to determine the guilt of Peter Griffin while he's driving. There's still so many assumptions made around skin colour that are meaningless. It's really interesting to see them punctured. And one of the first things that Rutherford mentions is this fact that if you think about family trees and you double every generation, I have 2 parents, they had 2 parents, which means I have 4 grandparents. If you keep on going upwards and upwards and upwards, the number of places on any of our family trees becomes astronomical. I think somewhere around the middle of the previous millennium, you end up with more people than have ever been alive at that time, as there are positions in your family tree. Just the simple, it's going back to the old, a coin doubled on each square of your chessboard, and eventually by the time you get to the chessboard it becomes an astronomical amount of money. The same is true of family trees, and for that reason it is ludicrous to suspect that none of us have, that for example I as a white guy don't have common ancestors with someone in sub-Saharan Africa, that we don't share a family tree with people living in East Asia. It's absurd when you look at it like that, particularly given that, as Rutherford says, that humanity sort of moved, the initial migration of humanity was out of Africa very slowly over millennia, starting about 70,000 years ago. So it's preposterous for us to sit here saying, well, there's this race here and this race there and this race there and there's people who are a fusion of the two. No, we're all a fusion of the two. What divides us more is the bullshit that we throw around I belong to this group and I'm going to exclude you. And that's what sort of Rutherford is puncturing. There's some really good stuff in there around physical prowess as well. Now, it's a very popular misconception. Indeed, I think we saw it at the 2012 Olympics, where you have this notion that black excellence in some track events it stems from kind of selective breeding during the period of slavery in America, which it has a superficial appeal to it because for the last sort of 30-40 years we've seen nothing but black victors in the 100 metres, but again, as Rutherford points out, it just doesn't hold up to scrutiny. Aside from anything else, Olympic athletes are not representative of any group of people other than Olympic athletes. They are for want of a better word, freaks of nature. They are extraordinarily examples of humanity, not ones that you can extrapolate from a meaningful sample. And aside from anything else, the number of them that there are for you to extrapolate from is absolutely tiny compared to the population as a whole. Now, you don't even need to hold up hard science necessarily on this. You can ask if kind of Jamaicans and if black Americans are so brilliant at sprinting because of their ancestry, and that's something ingrained in them genetically, then why is the same not true of West Africans, who are, they have that same kind of, it's West Africa where slaves were taken from in order to get across to North America. So why is there no similarity there? It's an incredibly powerful argument, and it helps you see things in new light when you are Rutherford draws your attention to the fact that culture is far more powerful than genetics in determining success in fields like that. The Ethiopians in East Africa are another example of this perceived kind of genetic, or they run all the time to school, therefore it's in their culture. Well, no, it may just be that there is excellence in these areas brought about by investment and funding and consolidation of expertise in those areas. And Akala's book that I talked about last week is very interesting on the same point. The point that Dr. Rutherford makes is you don't need genetics to explain what can already be explained by the fact that this cohort of people have trained very well under excellent guidance and are wonderful athletes. Certainly, you don't see, and this is mentioned in the book, you don't see any sort of confusion over the fact that in the 19th century it was Finnish people who were magnificent runners. For some reason, and I think we both know what that is, to do my own dog whistle there, for some reason there's a group of people who want to say that there is some genetic predisposition that differentiates black African athletes from everyone else. Coming on to the intellectual capacity, the example again that Rutherford uses is this idea that Jewish people are naturally more intelligent. And certainly if you look at statistics alone, in terms of representation of Jewish people in the Nobel Prize Winners' Hall of Fame, it would seem to be true. However, the exact same argument that applies to a culture of excellence within athletics can be applied to a sort of an academic culture within the Jewish community. So again, it doesn't hold up. And all throughout the book, you get this sense that Rutherford has brought a scalpel to a fog fight. Instead of accepting the common sense argument that your average kind of UKIP voter might come up with. Common sense, of course, being that well-known bullshit adhesive, which is so often bandied around, which doesn't actually mean anything when you get down into it. If you study the science at that sort of granular level that an expert will go into, all of the sort of myth and fog and noise disappears, and you are left with this fairly complicated selection of facts, but also nuance and uncertainty that scientists live in. Science isn't mathematics at the end of the day. There aren't always hard and fast answers, and certainly, as Rutherford says, in the field of genetics there is an awfully long way to go. If you work on the basis that we're a tiny fraction of our way through understanding the human genome, it's really interesting to think that only being that tiny fraction in, even that tiny amount of knowledge is enough to blast racist thinking out of the water, which is an indication of how stupid it is when you think about it. So, should you get this book in your life? Yes, you definitely should. If you already enjoy debating people, or if you already enjoy just knowing that you're on the right side of history, that sort of gleeful phrase that we like to bandy around again, Dr. Rutherford will explain to you exactly why the non-racist thinking is correct. If you get this book, it's kind of the scalpel in your armoury. It's incisive, it's going to cut through the nonsense in a way that sort of a run-of-the-mill polemic arguably wouldn't. So, yep, get this book in your life. It's superb. I will leave a copy of I'll leave a link so you can pick up your own copy in the description below. If you've enjoyed this video, then as always, please like, share, subscribe, talk about it on the bus as and when you can get back on a bus. Whatever you do, I could always use the exposure, as you know. Next week, I'm going to be, for the first time, bringing a history book into the conversation, because there is a book I really want to talk about at the moment called Stalingrad by Anthony Beevor. I'm not a military nut, I'm not a military buff, but there's some really powerful stuff in there, and if you pick up the audio book, Peter Noble's reading is just exceptional. It's sort of Richard Burton class, so I'm really looking forward to talking about that. But until then, have a good week everyone, and I will see you all next Sunday 8 PM. Cheers, bye.